Welcome to a special spring break edition of 805 Sports Talk. I'm Joe Bailey. Alongside me is Lorenzo Reyna and Kenny Kress. And, it's tournament time. A lot of schools are out for spring break. A lot of Santa Maria Valley schools, almost all the Santa Maria Valley schools are out for spring break. So that means a lot of teams either travel for tournaments or host tournaments in the area. And probably the biggest tournament during this time of year is Righetti Spring Classic, a great baseball tournament. And they have some really great teams coming to Santa Maria this year, and a lot of it has been held at Elks Field. I know some of the rain caused problems on Tuesday with games being moved to Lompoc. Some games are being held at Righetti High School, but the bulk of it takes place at Elks Field. And tonight, that's where the big game is going to be as Righetti hosts Alamany. But it's been kind of interesting so far for local teams. Not a whole lot of success, as a lot of strong teams from SoCal have came here, and a team from New Jersey, Ken, you saw them. You saw Righetti kind of struggle Tuesday night. How are the local teams faring, and how has host Righetti fared so far?
Well, to be honest, at the time of this airing, the Pac-8 and the Los Padres League were winless in the tournament. The team between them, those two leagues' teams had lost 4 one-run games. As of this airing anyway, Cabrillo was tied with Lakewood at 5 in the 4th. I saw that Eastern versus Righetti game. Eastern is based in Voorhees, New Jersey, I believe about 30 minutes east of Philadelphia. And
correct.
I'll tell you, if the way Eastern played is any indication of how they do it when it comes to Jersey baseball, I'm a believer. I mean, that team hustled. I can't say Righetti looked rattled or not, but quite honestly, Eastern can play, and they showed that. Righetti can play, and they did not show that. I mean, they had 5 errors. Whenever Righetti missed the cutoff man or made an errant throw, Eastern's guys who were just hustling all the way. They were either scoring or taking the extra base. I think Righetti can regroup tonight against Alamany. I think they were just off their game. But I was very impressed with Eastern. They looked like a good high school baseball team, not exactly a super team, but they did not make any errors. I did not see a whole lot wrong they did. Frankly, I think Righetti, quite honestly, learned a good baseball lesson that night, and Brian Tamuka said his guys need to face teams like that in the tournament.
Okay. Lorenzo, moving to you. You're the big Cabrillo Lompoc guy. You've seen a little bit of them the last couple of days. What's going on with them? Have they been struggling? Do you feel like they match up well with these type of teams that are coming here? Where do you think the Lompoc and Cabrillo sit at this tournament?
You know what's crazy, Joe, is that yesterday I was at the Chaminade Lompoc game, and there was a pitcher's duel. And throughout the whole game, Lompoc really showed that they can actually match up with, of all teams, Chaminade. Unfortunately, though, Chaminade had their top ace, Patrick Collins, just completely lights out on the mound. It wasn't until the 5th inning when he finally gave up a hit, and not only that, he didn't even allow a single Braves runner to reach second base. So when you have a pitcher like that, it speaks a lot of volumes. But Jim Allen praised Jesse Gasca, who's his #1 guy on the Braves side, and how he was able to not only keep the Chaminade batters in check, but one of those top hitters on Chaminade is a UC Santa Barbara commit in Reese Weinberg, and Weinberg struggled against Gasca. So on Lompoc's end, I feel like that Lompoc can match up with these teams. Unfortunately, they did lose to Merced, a Merced team that's traditionally pretty good in that area, in the Central Valley. As far as Cabrillo's concerned, I actually just got back from watching a high-scoring affair going on between Cabrillo and Lakewood. And, when Cabrillo is on its game offensively, they could put up a lot of runs, like somewhere between 10 or, as we saw against Orchid Academy, 23 runs. Unfortunately, though, Lakewood is a similar team. So it's one of those things where it's kind of like a Jekyll and Hyde kind of thing with Cabrillo right now. It's like if they look good one game offensively, chances are they're going to look bad the next game offensively, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think we've seen that all year with them.
Speaking of Orchid Academy, they've done quite well up in the Polo tournament. They've won their first 2 games. They're playing, I guess, kind of an out-of-bracket game against Dunn today, or they did. And they are in the championship bracket that starts Thursday.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that in the Nipomo tournament, they've actually, I think this is their first year that they've had that. They've brought a quite a few top teams to the area, and I think that was Monday. That was probably one of the most surprising results of a baseball game I've seen this year. Was that I think it was 5-0 Orchid Academy
I think so, yes.
over AG. Right. I saw Santa Maria beat Orchid Academy handily. Cabrillo dominated Orchid Academy. You saw that game, I think, last Monday. It was like 23-1 or something like that. And for a team of AG's caliber, where they're usually competing, for Pac-8 League championships, Brad Latchman knows what he's doing over there. And for Orchid Academy to win that 5-0, that was probably the most stunning result I've seen this year.
It's funny because I get that call on Monday night, and I hear a beaming Orchid Academy coach, and Daryl Black just, he couldn't wait to share like what happened. So, just jot down all the stats, and hey, I'd be as exuberant as well with a victory like that.
Yeah, and that one, Nipomo tournament will wrap up, I think, Thursday afternoon at Nipomo. All the championship games should be happening at Nipomo over there. So if you want to see some late games there at that tournament, go over to Nipomo High School. Elk should be where all the semifinals and championship games will be held for Righetti's tournament. Sticking to that a little bit, Kenny, why do you think some of the teams have struggled? Why do you think Righetti struggled? Is it the competition is good, or do you think it's maybe being on spring break, getting out of that routine a little bit? The kids are usually probably used to going to school, getting out early, going straight to the ball field. Now it's spring break. Do they lose a little bit of that routine? Do you think it can kind of mess with them a little bit?
Oh, honestly, I think they had an off night against a good team. Well, you could say, sure, Righetti's on spring break, and they're a little off their routine, but Eastern flew in from the East Coast, and I think, and what I heard, they did some visiting in Southern California before they came up here. I think they just had an off night, and Eastern was on. I cannot speculate what would happen if those two teams played again. I would not be prepared to say Righetti would win. I think it would be more competitive, but Eastern was on its game and Righetti was not. I think that's what it came down to. And all hats to Eastern. As I said, they certainly made me a believer. They're 4-1. They hustle. They really hustle. I think that's the bottom line with them. They play with a lot of energy, mentally and physically.
And I would imagine that if you're on spring break, that you would feel a little bit more energized because you could sleep in.
Yeah.
Your mind's not on like what assignment I need to do, what homework I have. I would think that spring break is more like a blessing for some of these teams, but I haven't seen Eastern play. I'm actually kind of curious now to see just how legit this team really is, Kenny.
They don't really have any, from at least what I saw, any big, tall guys. They're small to average size. They were aggressive at the plate, yet they were fairly disciplined. They would swing at some balls out of the strike zone, but very hittable pitches out of the strike zone. Maybe low to their liking or kind of high in the strike zone and kind of fat pitches. And they hit some good pitches. They hit some good pitches that Righetti's pitcher threw. Yeah. So I thought they were certainly very vocal and the most vocal team I've seen, but they backed it up.
Yeah.
They weren't talking smack or anything. They were just yelling a lot. But they played with enthusiasm too. So they're an intriguing team, I think.
Maybe they wanted to show the California teams how they do it back east. Maybe they're a little extra motivated. California, so we get to play like year-round baseball, and usually back east they don't get that year-round because they usually have harsh winters. So maybe they're a little extra motivated.
That's usually the case in every sport. Anytime you get like two football teams from different states going against each other, one of them's going to play with that edge because they want to prove something. Same thing on the basketball court, and as we're seeing, it's like that in baseball.
Well, like I said, if the Eastern brand of baseball is how they do it on the East Coast, I'm a believer. I think that's a pretty good baseball area anyway. I wouldn't say it's among the elite in high school, as in say the Californias or the Floridas or Texas or maybe Arizona, but it's the Philadelphia metropolitan area. They're pretty good.
Of course, Mike Trout for the Angels. Mike Trout for the Angels, I think, is from right around there. He didn't go to that high school, but he's from New Jersey. Yeah. So obviously they can produce top talent, and so
they've had good little league teams there. So it's
I think Tom's
good
River,
tradition.
New Jersey, usually competes. Always hear that name during the summer when the Little League World Series starts around. But it's not all about tournaments at this time of the year. In fact, Lompoc softball team played Santa Ynez in an LPL game on Tuesday, and Lorenzo, you saw Lompoc softball team lose to Santa Maria last week 10-0. So once again, kind of up and down team Lompoc softball, maybe down a little bit more, but they did get a kind of surprising win on Tuesday. How's the Lompoc softball team looking?
You know, I'll give McKenna Martin the benefit of the doubt. I mean, I know that she's kind of a zany personality, but she's very honest, and she kind of hinted that this Lompoc Braves team was due to have some early lapses and basically some growing pains because of the fact that a majority of the players from last year's championship team was gone. It's predominantly a freshman-sophomore lineup. Unfortunately, though, from what I've observed, there's a lot of fundamental issues that I've noticed with this team. I mean, there's inconsistency with the communication on defense. Sometimes I see the bases loaded and they're facing one out, and then they don't get any runs in. Well, obviously I wasn't at the Santa Ynez game, so I don't know what really happened, but that's a huge emotional lift for Martin and Lompoc, and you know, it's definitely a good confidence booster if they're serious about making that playoff run. And I think if you're Martin and if you're the Braves, at this point it's more about just finishing out the year strong, whether if you get a low seed in the playoffs or maybe just get to the 500 mark, because you know, it is a young team. There was a lot of mental errors throughout the whole year, but you know, maybe the Santa Ynez game is a good indication that maybe at this point the ship's going to move in the right direction. Yeah,
I think that shows how wide open that LPL softball is. We thought Santa Ynez was going to be the rising team. We thought Lompoc might have a late push, and it's kind of looking like they are, but then also Santa Maria has been right there as well. What did you see from Santa Maria in their 10-0 win over Lompoc last week?
I became a believer of Santa Maria. I mean, there's those teams that peak at the right time, and I feel like the Saints have become that team. When they put their offense together and when their pitcher Glidewell is on her game, this team can be one of the more dangerous ones in the league, and they're capable of beating teams pretty handily. I mean, I was shocked to see the way they beat Lompoc in that game, especially considering the fact that the game ended in early innings. Yeah. So Greg Guerrero really has something really special going in Santa Maria.
Yeah, I think we always hear Greg Guerrero is coaching a team, and you can usually expect a little bit of a bump there once you see that he's kind of the head coach in that position. So that's good to see, and we'll see if the Saints do have a late playoff push in them. Another big result for the Lompoc Valley on Tuesday was Cabrillo's tennis win over Santa Ynez. Can you kind of break that one down for a little bit? How is Cabrillo looking in that LPL title?
I mean, the tennis program has long been like one of those sleeper programs at Cabrillo, but I mean, I have to give credit to David Riley and what he's done in just a short amount of time that he's been there. I mean, in the singles area, which has long been like the kryptonite for Cabrillo, they not only swept Santa Ynez, but they actually handily beat Braxton Johnson, the #1 guy on the Santa Ynez roster, and arguably one of the tougher tennis players to go against. And Cabrillo had every single player, including Josh Ogan, who admitted in the past that he struggles against Braxton. He beat him pretty handily. In fact, had a comeback victory in the first set against Braxton. Now, the doubles area was where Cabrillo and Santa Ynez struggled, but they managed to get 2 key wins late that helped solidify the victory. But you know, David Riley really does have something really good going at Cabrillo, especially in the shadow of what Cabrillo softball and baseball has done.
And I think they tweeted out that it's the first time that Cabrillo has swept Santa Ynez, and you know they don't even know how long. So that shows you how momentous of a pair of wins those are to sweep Santa Ynez, which perennially dominates that league. I think Kenny, you covered their championship run 2 or 3 years ago, so they do have a recent CIF championship not too long ago. But here Cabrillo is sweeping them at an 11-7 win on Tuesday. And I think the girls also swept Santa Ynez during the girls' tennis season. So it's impressive to see where Cabrillo's at as far as tennis goes. Now going to you, Kenny, we're going to move to Hancock softball. We weren't sure what to expect out of the Bulldogs early on in the season, even maybe midway through. But they've improved, and they got an interesting matchup on Thursday as Quest is coming to town. What's going on with Hancock softball?
To be honest, they've exceeded my expectations a little bit. Not that they were any expectations, and maybe CMMO Soul, their coach, expected them to be right where they are. But they're 17-3 in conference play. They were pending Questa's doubleheader result at Santa Monica, which I'm pretty sure Cuesta won, although the scores haven't been posted. Hancock was 2 games up. They play Cuesta Thursday. Hancock has 4 games left. An interesting point about that was when the teams played a doubleheader at Cuesta, Cuesta won the second game 2-1. The first game, I guess there was a substitution controversy, and I'm not sure, but I believe it was originally called a 7-0 forfeit for Cuesta on the grounds of an illegal substitution by Hancock. Hancock protested. I haven't been able to get any official word from Hancock yet, but I'm gathering the protest was upheld because that game will resume at the point where the protest took place, which was in the 6th inning, and the score was tied 2-2. So they'll finish that game, and the resumption of that game is scheduled to start at noon, and the regularly scheduled game between the teams is set for 1 at Hancock. The kicker is that the earlier doubleheader was at Cuesta, so Cuesta will be the designated home team, and they will be the de facto home team in that suspended game, even though it will be finished at Hancock.
Yeah. So if you're interested in Hancock softball, Thursday at noon, they're going to resume that game in the top of the 6th inning, tied 2-2. It'll be at Hancock, but Cuesta will actually be the designated home team, so it'll be interesting if you want to see a fun, maybe an hour of softball, maybe half hour of softball. We'll see how quickly they'll wrap that one up. Check that out. That's a huge game. And then, of course, a regularly scheduled game will resume hopefully around 1. So it's definitely some big-time, pivotal games at Hancock for the Hancock softball team. They're right on the cusp of clinching another WSC championship. So moving on to some national news. There's been a lot of breaking news the last couple days. And this morning, probably a lot of you get a notification on your phone or, maybe a text from someone. And the big news this morning was Aaron Hernandez. Last week, he got off on that double murder charge. People were kind of surprised about that. He was acquitted. And suddenly this morning, the news started spreading that he had hanged himself in his jail cell near Boston. So, just a tragic fall from grace for Aaron Hernandez. Doing some reading on this, some comments online were interesting. He was drafted at 20 years old out of Florida by New England, signed a huge deal a couple of years later at age 22. By the age 25, he was convicted of murder. And now at age 27, he's dead. So, within the span of 7 years, he rose to NFL stardom, and, now he's gone. So, starting with you, Lorenzo, how would you kind of sum up what happened with Aaron Hernandez? How did this come to be? Where do you think his troubles come from? And no one was able to kind of get through to this guy and get him straightened out, even though he had some great coaches in football. What do you think happened with Aaron Hernandez?
To me, it's almost as if he pushed his own luck, but a part of me feels like that he was bothered by maybe some inner demons. I don't know much about his family atmosphere other than the fact that he has a brother who once had a job at the University of Iowa, but he can't get a football job, any prominent football job, because of what his brother did. But, when I look at Hernandez, unfortunately it's a cautionary tale because of the fact that at a young age, the guy, as you mentioned, gets drafted by not just an NFL franchise, but the New England Patriots. Now the gold standard of the NFL. Then he gets this huge mega $1 million deal at 22, and now not even in his 30th birthday he's gone. But I read into some stories that he was influenced by a lot of those gang movies, and he wanted to be like his own modern day Tony Montana. Well, that's a fictional character at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And my biggest concern now is what becomes of his 8-year-old daughter. I'm hoping that 10 years from now, we read stories on how the daughter is thriving, the daughter's applying for colleges, the daughter might be a straight A student, because unfortunately, when she goes out in public, there's going to be, unfortunately, 1 or 2 people who's going to mention the father's name, and unfortunately, she has to carry that burden with her.
And this is a guy, Aaron Hernandez, who grew up, in Bristol, Connecticut, where sports are huge. We know ESPN is right there. You don't think of it as a roughneck kind of neighborhood, but He grew up kind of tough. I think he lost his dad very young, but he had a great brother who was a role model. I think, he's a high school football coach in Connecticut. I think he played football at Connecticut, and then, Aaron went on to Florida. He had Urban Meyer as a coach, Bill Belichick as a coach. Tim Tebow was his quarterback at Florida, but yet no one could really get through to him and, get him to put this silly, street tough kind of persona aside and say, you know, you got millions ahead of you, you got stardom ahead of you, you could be an NFL or a pro football Hall of Famer if you keep this up. No one was able to get through to him. You know, it's kind of interesting that.
I will say adopting this whole like street tough persona, it's overrated. It's more, I mean, it's funny because I feel like a lot of it comes from music. Well, those musicians you see, like the Rick Rosses, the Kendrick Lamars and all that, in reality, a lot of these guys are either parents or they're married or they're godparents. I mean, there's nothing that says that, you know, they belong to the Vice Lords or whatever.
Yeah. Kenny, some people have been saying that they haven't seen a troubled athlete, troubled NFL player quite like this since O.J. Simpson. Do you think there are some parallels through there? Do you think have you seen an athlete quite go through the struggles that Aaron Hernandez has?
I can't recall one right off the bat. I haven't, to be honest, I haven't done a whole lot of reading on it, but I know that he never shook some of the bad ties he had to some people in Bristol. He had a tough life in Bristol. Bristol, they're a struggling town. Factories were once big there, and now I guess a lot of them have gone out of business or struggling. He came from a tough place, and I think he had inner demons, as Lorenzo said.
Yeah.
And I don't think he shook off the bad ties he had in Bristol. And as far as his daughter goes, some people really need more of a life. A child goes out in the street and she's going to be traumatized by what happened to her father as it is. If they can't say anything nice to her, then they shouldn't say anything at all.
In regards to the whole Hernandez-OJ comparison, I mean, keep in mind, OJ was like a beloved figure for many years until the trial of the century. I could probably compare Hernandez to Ray Caruth. You probably remember that name. I mean, granted, Caruth played on a franchise that at the time was mediocre, and this is coming from a Carolina Panthers fan because it was during the George Seifert days. Well, Caruth was actually still a first-round pick. He had an amazing 40-yard dash time, showed glimpses of stardom, and then he had that issue with trying to put a hit on his girlfriend.
Yeah.
So I think Caruth kind of might be one of those more accurate comparisons to Hernandez.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the crazy stories. I think that was, you know, mid-'90s, early '90s. One of those stories that you'll never forget. And, you know, I was a young kid hearing about that, and I couldn't believe it. And I think there are some good comparisons there with what the charges that were acquitted of that double murder charge last week was. Apparently this all started over a spilled drink. You know, the prosecution was saying that one of the two men spilled a drink on Hernandez, and that was what sparked, you know, the homicide attempt by Hernandez. That's what the prosecution was saying. So, you know, just silly things that caused that. I think, you know, Caruth's girlfriend was pregnant at the time, so that's why he tried to put a hit out on them. So it's just, you know, people just have these motives that just really don't make sense. And, so, you know, you hope someone gets through to them. You think when you play football to such a high degree that there are some mentors there, that some people that help you get up to that level and can kind of guide you to the right path. But we see that even though they're a great athlete, great NFL player, that, you know, they still don't quite get straightened out. So, you know, hopefully we don't have to talk about too many stories like this in the future. You know, it's just a sad tale for
just the fact that there was that kind of escalation over a spilled drink gives you a little bit of insight as to how a hair trigger temper he had and the troubles he was dealing with.
And of course, some people will probably try to draw, you know, the correlations between playing a violent game like football and then, you know, someone committing a violent act like that. You know, you wonder if it does have an impact on someone's, you know, state of mind with them playing such a physical game. I don't know, but, you know, I'm sure some people will try to.
He did play tight end, so I mean, unfortunately, he's used to shots to bed.
I think there could be a tie, but I mean, I think there could be a tie there, but you know, we also have to remember that the vast majority of professional football players, they never have a record with the law, let alone.
Yeah. Either way you look at it, I mean, Tebow was in his corner, Belichick was in his corner, he had Robert Kraft in his corner, Urban Meyer was in his corner, and again, I mean, just unfortunately a cautionary tale.
Yeah. Moving from a tight end with Aaron Hernandez played to a quarterback, Derek Carr, Raiders quarterback. A little controversy this week. you know, he made a quote, got misconstrued, I think, taken out of context a little bit, where, you know, people were saying that if you don't still like the Raiders after they moved from Oakland to Las Vegas, that you weren't a true Raider fan. And of course, Stephen A. Smith, you know, just took that little snippet and kind of called out Derek Carr, saying he has a lot of nerve to say that, you know, they're not true Raider fans after dealing with, you know, years of mediocrity, you know, so many failed seasons. And, you know, and Carr responded on Twitter, you know, he said, don't at me with this kind of stuff, because they, you know, mentioned him on Twitter. He was kind of upset with it, and, you know, they kind of hashed it out over Twitter. But I thought Carr was right. You know, he was just saying that, you know, we've been through a lot. Usually when a franchise leaves a city, there's some major animosity between the fan base and the team, you know, moving to that new city. And he hopes that that's not what happens between Oakland and the Raiders. So I felt, you know, Carr was right to kind of be upset that, you know, they were taking his words out of context. Usually I think, you know, that no context excuse is probably, you know, unwarranted, but this case I think it was right for Carr to say, you know, there's more to what I said. Lorenzo, what do you think about that? What do you think about Carr kind of defending himself, and do you think, you know, that he kind of had a point? How do you feel about what Derek
Since when
said?
does Stephen A. Smith pay attention to the Raiders or even become a Raider fan himself? That's what it sounds like. And this is the same guy who tried to pick a fight with Kevin Durant. I mean, I've lost all my respect for Stephen A. Smith, honestly. I mean, I used to be that aspiring journalist who looked at him and said, you know, this is a legit dude, but he goes with the same stuff that made him famous 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And as far as Carr is concerned, it's like, you know what? We've seen this like when teams move. I mean, look at the Rams. I mean, when St. Louis lost to the Rams, I mean, you had to wonder, I mean, are the St. Louis fans going to follow the team? And, you know, to me, the Rams turned out all right because, you know, they're gaining a lot of traction in L.A. since then, especially in the Ventura County area. But
And I think St. Louis is what, suing the NFL and the Rams franchise,
right.
so you see the animosity there.
Yeah, exactly. But does Stephen A. Smith have something better to do other than call athletes out on Twitter? Shouldn't he be complaining about the Knicks, his team?
Yeah.
Or shouldn't he be calling out his old boy Skip Bayless, who another name I don't like to mention?
Yeah.
I thought I had read a quote from Carr earlier, in fact, saying that they needed to take care of their fans in Oakland this year and then worry about doing well by their fans, future fans in Las Vegas.
Yeah, it was a great statement what he said, you know, that he just hopes that they stick together, the fans stick together. He said we're not going to split up like you've seen other cities do. That seems like a great statement. But of course, what Stephen A. Smith does and what First Take does in ESPN, they just take that one snippet where he says, you know, if you don't like us after we move, you're not a true Raiders fan. Of course, that's what kind of sticks out. And I think it just shows kind of, you know, what a lot of sports journalism media like ESPN, of course Fox Sports probably does it as well, where they kind of just find that one little snippet where they can have a good sound bite and, you know, kind of create some debate there and, you know, get a lot of people to tune in or talk about it.
That's all it is. I mean, a show like First Take, it's driven by ratings, and it's also driven by who can yell the loudest. That's why I don't watch that show. Well, unfortunately, a guy like Stephen A. Smith is perfect for that show. Same thing with Max Kellerman, who I look at as a has-been.
Yeah, so it just kind of shows, you know, where the TV side of it is, and, you know, ESPN and First Take in general is a great example of kind of what they try to do. Just get that one little soundbite and try to have it maybe go viral. So hopefully they'll kind of move away from that, I hope, and, you know, kind of have a broader, more intellectual conversation instead of just picking one little thing and kind of dwelling on that. Getting back to some results, you know, actually examining, you know, what's happening on the court or the field is the NBA playoffs. A lot of people have been following that. Just curious who you guys think might be, you know, after a few games in the first round, who do you guys think are going to end up in the finals so far? Lorenzo, who do you think is looking like finals favorites?
I'll start by saying this. I am pretty much going to put the Boston Celtics in the morgue. I mean, it's one thing to lose like one game at home, but both games at home and to the 8th seed, and now you're going to Chicago next. Plus you still got veteran guys like Dwayne Wade, Lopez, you got Rajon Rondo. I mean, I don't like Boston's chances, so I still look at Cleveland as a team to still come out of the East. As far as the West, I'm leaning more towards San Antonio, honestly. I mean, I've become a lot more of a fan of Kawhi Leonard. He really embodies what San Antonio is all about. I mean, there's nothing flashy, there's no flair. He doesn't draw too much attention from the media. He just goes out and works. He's a big fundamentalist, kind of like how Tim Duncan was and David Robinson. So he really fits that mold of what Greg Popovich wants to do in San Antonio. So, I mean, and then you have your other key role players, especially on the defensive side. I mean, I think San Antonio really matches well with Golden State. Hence why I feel like I'm starting to lean more towards San Antonio, Cleveland.
Yeah, I think Kawhi Leonard's probably my favorite player in the NBA, just the best two-way player that we've seen in a long time. But I would have a hard time thinking the Spurs can keep up with Golden State. Obviously, if Kevin Durant is back up to 100%, I think he might sit for Wednesday night's game. But I think the Warriors are probably ease into the finals. So that would be my pick from the West for the finals. And I think Cleveland's really going to get it together. They really haven't showed that they can play that defense that they need to. We saw it in the finals last year where they really tightened things up defensively with LeBron making some great plays defensively. J.R. Smith looked good defensively. Even Kevin Love made some great defensive stops in last year's finals. I don't know if they can, kind of ratchet it up and get that defense back to where it was last year, but I think they can cruise into the finals. You saw the Raptors struggle, against the Bucks. You mentioned the Celtics where Isaiah Thomas obviously going through a great tragedy. A lot of people have said that he's not 100%, up to where his level has been throughout the year. He's probably a dark horse MVP candidate, and he just hasn't able to kind of lift the team, understandably, obviously with him losing his sister. So that's a tough pick for the Celtics. So I think the Cavs are looking like the Eastern Conference favorites to get through there. And, you mentioned the Bulls are 2-0 over the Celtics, but I don't know if they have enough to kind of keep that going. So, I mean, I think the Cavs, Warriors, once again, that would be the third straight year. And I'm not going to, be upset at that. They usually have some pretty good finals games. So I would be looking forward to Warriors-Cavs finals. Kenny, what about you?
As for now, at least, I would pick the Cavaliers out of the East, but no team out of the East really jumps out at me. Like the Warriors. Warriors, I think, are at least as good a bet as any. I would not be surprised to see a Warriors-Cavaliers final for the third straight year. If that happens, I would not even hazard a prediction at that point.
Yeah.
So that would go, especially with Durant's health. I guess it's on the upswing. The prognosis for him.
And if it does happen, if that first straight matchup happens, pressure's on Golden State. You bring in Kevin Durant, and there's a reason behind that. You want to unseat Cleveland, get the title back to Oakland. You gotta take advantage.
Yeah, I think the Warriors would be the favorites if they meet Cleveland in the final. If they meet anyone in the finals, obviously they're going to be a favorite. And I think their toughest road will be in the conference finals. Whoever they meet, it's probably going to be their toughest challenge. I don't think anyone in the East is really going to give them too much of a challenge. But that's what we thought last year. And Cleveland came back from a 3-1 deficit. So
I was over when it was 3. Right.
Yeah.
I was over when it was 3-1.
Yeah. Either way, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I love the NBA playoffs. Probably my favorite postseason of all the sports, better than college basketball. NFL playoffs are usually okay, usually pretty good. MLB playoffs might be second for me, but I love the NBA playoffs. They're long, about 2 months, and you usually get a lot of good games. So I love this time of year with baseball starting up, and then you get the NBA playoffs, so it's a lot of fun.
Well, the NFL playoffs are short, and some of the early games are dogs.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Not too many good NFL playoffs or in the divisional round or wild card games. So I love that we have series and it's long. You get about 2 months of playoff basketball, which is a lot of fun. That's all we got for this week. Thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to tune in our coverage for the rest of the week. A lot of tournaments are going to be wrapping up the next couple of days, and we do have the Best of the West tournament starting Friday and Saturday. That's going to be at Hagerman. We'll have the Santa Barbara County Track and Field Championships on Saturday. Kenny, you're going to Carpinteria to see that. So check out our coverage Saturday night online, and in Sunday's print edition, we also have the Swimming County Championships on Saturday. Those should be at Righetti. So we have a lot of good coverage planned for the rest of this week and the weekend. And, of course, we'll see you next week for another edition of 805 Sports Talk.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Thank you.